Hello, good morning. We're your first panel at Rice 2024. My name is Claire Folkman,
Kelly Phillips.
and we are the editors and publishers of Dirty Diamonds and All Girl Comic Anthology. So I'm going to start out by giving you guys kind of like the baseline talking points for Dirty Diamonds. We're going to go through each of us as artists, and then we're going to talk about how we handle each issue in terms of the process, and then sort of what the life of a comic anthology looks like, at least from our perspective. So like I said, Dirty Diamonds is an all-girl comic anthology. What we do for each issue is we put out an open call on the internet asking for female and femme comic creators to submit semi-autobiographical, so based on real life, stories to us around a central theme. We then work with each of the artists editorially to push their stories in the most diverse perspectives possible. We then run a Kickstarter for each issue to be able to not only print the book, but then be able to pay all of our contributors because we believe in treating the women of comics like the professionals they are. Did I miss anything? Nope. Excellent. So we're going to start out with me. Like I said, my name is Claire Folkman. I have a BFA in fine art with a minor in art history from Moore College of Art and Design in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I work out of a studio in my home. And I always like to tell everybody that I do have a job. I work as an administrative assistant for a nonprofit in Philadelphia. And then what you can see here are some of the examples on, what is this? My left, your right, of the comics that I have in Dirty Diamonds, because each issue of Dirty Diamonds also contains comics from both of us.
We'll say more about how and why.
Yeah, we'll get there. First thing out of college I did is this series of collages where I was combining photographs of furniture from the American wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York with images from 1960s pulp romance comics and romance novel covers. And you'll kind of see sort of that like romantic, flowery theme consistently throughout my work. These are a couple of items that are available on the table. We're at table 13 in the room. I'm sure you all know that at this point. On this side is a comic I did called Missing, which is a series of ruminations on things that I feel are key Barbie experiences that are missing from the Greta Gerwig Barbie movie. In the center is Shovel Cave, which is a 24-hour comic challenge I did that Kelly put together at Atomic City Comics in Philadelphia, where what you need to do is you have to draw you have to complete a 24-page comic in 24 hours. So I chose to do mine about Shovel Cave after seeing the Werner Herzog film, Cave of Forgotten Dreams. And then lastly up there is a comic called Duty, which is a series I do using the hourly comic format, where I document my day participating in the civic duty of jury duty. I want to talk about Hourly Comic Day because it's a big part of the work that I do, and it's also something I think in terms of the comics community that everyone should be encouraged to participate in. So every February 1st is Hourly Comic Day. It was invented by the artist that did the comic called Pictures for Sad Children. And what you do is every hour that you're awake, you document something that happened during that last hour for the entire day. So you can see here on This is comics from, I want to say, about 2018, and this over here is comics from 2020, but it's February 1st, so 2020 has not happened yet. I really like this process. I think it's a really interesting way to show people how you live, what your life is like, what clothes are you wearing, what does your vocabulary look like. I think it's a really interesting way to get like a snapshot into people's lives. And then because so many artists participate in this process on February 1st, you can go through and see what is everybody's day like on the same day. So using that format, I just completed this comic. This is my most recent piece of work where my husband is in an indie rock band called Restorations, and they played a show at the Metro Theater in Chicago in December of 2023. Never wanted to be left home alone. I tagged along to help them handle merch, and I documented the entire journey out, the show and back using the hourly comic day format, which I have now compiled into this comic called Tour.
All right, now a little bit about me. I'm also a cartoonist and illustrator based in Philadelphia, and much like Claire, this isn't the only thing I do with my time. I also have a full-time job, so comics are the evening full-time job that we give ourselves the pleasure of doing. So here, just like Claire did, I gave you kind of a collage of examples of the work that I do, which I'll go into a little bit more, and then also some samples of pages that I have also contributed to Dirty Diamonds. So the work that I'm probably best known for is called Weird Me. It's a memoir comic that I made about how my teenage years were spent being the webmaster of a Weird Al fan site. So it's very much about my experiences during that time, which was at the turn of the century, so very early baby internet, where the only way that you could truly express your passions for things was to build an HTML-based website. But it's also very much a story about that kind of deep burning passion and fandom that you have that is so uniquely at that age, and how you can just completely consume yourself and commit yourself to something that you really truly enjoy. So it's very much about how do you develop and how do you live through such an impassioned part of your life? How does it kind of fall out of your life as you grow up? And maybe how do you rediscover some of those things that did matter so much to you in your really formative years when you're kind of finding out who you are as an adult? So I also do several other memoir focused projects, one of which is an ongoing series that I do called The Catalog. I grew up in a crazy cat lady household. My mom was a veterinarian, which I think is just enablement for collecting animals. So this is just a series of short stories about different cats in particular that I grew up with. Some funny, some sad, some hopefully a little poignant, but all just, little love letters to different animals in my life. And then on the other side of the screen, I have maybe a memoir fantasy, but a true story about how I was Phantom of the Opera by a man who dresses up as Skeletor in Philadelphia and runs a karaoke event gong show style. So this is a true story of how I was nearly taken by Philadelphia's Phantom, aka Skeletor. I also have some examples here of a book that I did, which is a parody of a very well-known Dr. Seuss book that I think a lot of folks get when they're shipping off to college. So I get a lot of parents whose children gravitate to this, then they see the contents that I've put together and get a good chuckle out of it. But I consider this to be the true college advice book. But the tagline that I give is that it's a Seussical ode to a drunk girl's night out, the details of which she'll know nothing about. And on the other side of the page, very much in stark contrast to this, is a travel diary that I completed on a trip that I took with my mom to Austria, which is where her family is originally from. And it was really meant to mirror an experience that she had with her father when she was about 19 or 20 years old, where he was able to take her home and really get to experience his homeland. So it felt at a certain point in my life that I kind of owed her the same trip. But that also did not lean into my knowledge that we have a contentious relationship. So it's very much sort of about the dynamics that come out of a mother-daughter relationship when you put yourselves in close quarters in another continent. And then lastly, this is just some examples of some work that I've done for other projects or other people, including some illustration work. So going back to my Weird Me book, that's also leveraged me into several other projects. Which include having done a book cover for a music theorist who did an entire book about Weird Al's music from a very serious academic perspective called Weird Al Seriously. And I've also gotten to do some pages for Weird Al since he published a book last year or 2 years ago that was comic interpretations of several of his songs. So that was kind of a lovely full circle moment for me personally. And otherwise, I just have my own illustration series that I do here and there, core of which is probably a series of portraits that I do of various ladies from sci-fi properties that have been very meaningful to me. So fortunately, we are living in kind of a sci-fi renaissance right now, so I get to continue growing this series with new and fun ladies throughout media. Yeah, that is the two of us. So now we're going to transition into really talking about what the genesis of Dirty Diamonds was and why we felt so impassioned to do this project for over 10 years.
So Kelly and I became friends in seventh grade cartooning club. We were in middle school band together and basically kind of worked side by side through a variety of like goofy internet sort of illustration projects up until we graduated and went to college. We both went our separate ways at college, and then we both ended up back in Philadelphia and reconnected at an event called the Philly Comics Jam, which is cartoonists in Philadelphia coming together to work on collaborative comics, sort of like an Exquisite Corpse style. And then you'll see here, this photograph is actually the evening before the founding of Dirty Diamonds with all 4 members of the founding party of Dirty Diamonds. We attended an event called Drink and Draw Like a Lady in New York in 2010.
2010? Yeah. 2010, 2011?
2011. Which is an event that used to happen in New York before the Mocha Fest, which is the Museum of Cartoon and Comics Arts puts together a little like indie tabling fest, where we went to this very tiny bookstore in Chelsea that was absolutely packed with ladies who made and loved and enjoyed comics. And we drank a lot of wine and had a lot of fun. And then the next day we went to Mocha Fest. And we looked at all the things on tables. There was a lot of anthologies out at the time, and they were like 60 men and 2 women. And we were like, well, this is dumb. And we knew people in Philadelphia who had put out anthologies of their own, and they were dear friends of ours. And we went, well, if they can do it, we can do it.
And it was very much born out of, we had just had this really uplifting experience in this bookshop, crammed full of all of these women who were super passionate about comics. And when we were looking around at the different work that was being made available to us, we weren't seeing the people and the voices and the work that we were excited to see. Mm-hmm. So it dawned on us that we had the capability and the willpower to just put it out there ourselves. And that was then our first venture into self-publishing.
In case you haven't already read it, there's a very important Post-it note comic behind us that is the genesis of the Dirty Diamonds name in all of its glory.
It's a very well thought out decision. So then, the first 4 issues of Dirty Diamonds you'll see here were done very much in a DIY style. It was as accessible as it could be to us at the time, which meant breaking into work after hours and using the copy machine, and then sitting on a floor for several hours folding and sewing books together. This is before we then acquired long arm staplers and saved ourselves several hours of labor. But they were very much just centered on how do we get work printed and out there as easily and economically as possible. So the first issue, which is the yellow cover, the theme of which was alcohol, since we all had very relevant experiences in the generation of the idea of Dirty Diamonds. And it was just the 4 of us who were in that last photo, which was Claire and I and our friends Dre Grigoropoulos and Carrie Peach. So it was the 4 of us. We came up with the theme that we felt like we had some funny ideas to put together, and we made a 20-page book. And that was our first time getting to sell a comics anthology. And I remember that after we had done that first event, and we had a little release party, and everyone was really jazzed about the idea. One of us asked the other, we put a number 1 on that cover, so what's the next one? And then we realized we had a series on our hands, and we started to solicit the internet for proposals and for submissions to our books. And that really was then our first eye-opening experience into how many people we could then invite into this community that we were starting to cultivate within our Dirty Diamonds books.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to kind of transition into what the Dirty Diamonds process looks like. So the first step for every issue of Dirty Diamonds is an open call. Like I said before, we ask for female and femme comic creators to submit semi-autobiographical stories to us. What's been really great about let's say our place in time is we've been able to utilize the internet to really connect to people on a global scale. So we've had submissions from all over the world. We have 6 different countries represented in the Dirty Diamonds alumni, let's say.
I think it's 20 countries.
Is it 20 countries?
Yeah.
Awesome. See, I'm undereducated as it is. But it also gave us the opportunity to work with a variety of artists that like we ourselves had never heard of, because at the time Twitter was very big. We were really able to just post this open call on like Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, and it sort of grew a life of its own. So every successive issue just becomes larger and larger and larger and larger.
And when we're coming up with the themes and these proposals, we're very much about what's going to generate the most broad and interesting variety of responses. So we try to think of things that are very universal, very accessible. And then with these proposals, we really try to not kind of tip our hand or try to give people a sense of what it is that we might be looking for, because we're also trying to stay as blank slate as possible. And then we really get in the next slide, you'll see sort of what we then comb through, but what we're really hoping for is just unique, diverse, interesting, unexpected takes on this very general theme.
So after the close of the open call, this is what Dirty Diamonds looks like. It's a Google form. All praise the Google form. We then each go, and you can see in the various columns, I'm looking at columns M and N, we each go through and review each proposal. So proposals, I'm just going to toggle towards one and then we'll go back. This is basically what we ask for in a proposal. We want a vague idea of what you're kind of doing, and then we want to see samples of your work because we want to know, do you have an idea that is compelling? Do you have a complete story? And then do you have work that we feel like can carry your idea? And we're really not looking for, like, let's say, good work. We just want work that can be communicative and will convey the story that you want to tell.
Yeah, it's effective, interesting, unique to your experience.
Yes. So we go through and we file everything into yes, no, maybe. We go through all the no's and decide if we are in agreement on the categories we've selected. We go through all the maybes and push them into either the no or the yes column. And then we go through the yeses and just have a really great time celebrating people.
And this process definitely evolved over time, because originally we were accepting completed comics.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were realizing through our first few series of publications was that some comics were really well conceived, really well executed, and were great as is. And others, we wish we could have had a little bit of, pushing them in a certain direction or having them revised just a little bit more. And by the time we got to our beauty issue is when we really fully submitted ourselves to an editorial process. And we think that also made it more accessible for people who wanted to submit to us, because we weren't asking them to do a lot of labor up front, not knowing if they were going to, be able to get into the book or get much farther with it. It was really about, give us your ideas and give us whatever materials you think we need to know to be able to fall in love with your idea.
Mm-hmm.
And through starting to do that process, we really found that we fell in love with that editorial process, because it was very much about, how do we empower these people whose ideas we're super excited about to be the best product possible?
So a big part of also us moving into acting more as editors and less of just straight up publishers is we both come from an art school background, and we both got to experience that art school joy that is critique. And we found that once we were out of college, it was harder and harder to find a space where someone would give you legitimate feedback on your work. So anytime Kelly and I encounter something that we want to see in the world that we're not seeing, we just do it ourselves. So we then started really honing our skill in how do we convey information back to these creators? How do we offer them feedback? How do we push the work that we're seeing in the most diverse ways possible? So that way we get a really comprehensive issue based on just a really broad theme that we've thrown out there. So now as editors, we also work in stages. So we ask for initial thumbnails, and this is an example of Lyra Chronic, thank you, from our beauty issue. So this is just really to kind of show you like where an artist starts and then where it all ends up. So we asked to see this because this is the moment where we start to look at pacing. We look at the words that you're using to describe things versus the images that you're using to convey a concept. What needs to be encouraged, what needs to maybe be dialed back. A piece of feedback we give very often is to cut whatever you've written in half. Like you need half as many words as what you've got, and you need to convey way more with your pictures. As you can see, these are very rough, and then it really gives us a lot of space to be able to encourage them to make the changes that we think might be helpful.
We're also extremely forgiving in this process because I, for one, am definitely a big sinner in this space where my process looks like an absolute chaos nightmare until it's done. So we're very much, we meet people where they're at. It's very much not trying to push them to be at certain places at certain times, but just about let us help you where you can benefit the most.
Mm-hmm. So this is the next step in the process. This is basically completed drawings and completed layouts, but we haven't gone to ink yet. We haven't gone to tone. This gives us a chance to really look at the quality of the drawings. This gives us the chance to really make sure that the story is understood and is, something that's digestible. Kelly is amazing and checks all the spelling. It just gives us a chance to start to really understand the flow of the story and then the level of detail that we're going to be expecting when we get to inks and tones.
And it's really meant to be a give and take as well. So we've had plenty of creators come to us say, I don't really know if this is the right option, or I have kind of a few different ideas for how I can approach this. So we also always are very open and welcoming any sort of workshopping that people want to do to make sure that they're able to get whatever ideas across that they would like to do. So whatever they need of us, we're always available to them. And then we also hope that they receive our feedback well and incorporate that.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, finish comics. This is always a fun moment to see something that you've really just seen as a couple strokes on a piece of paper become this completely fleshed out item that we're going to be really excited to print in a book in context with other people. Usually at this point, we've given the majority of our feedback and we're just celebrating every person who comes across the finish line because we're thrilled that they wanted to participate. And we're also thrilled that somebody wanted to make really cool art that we're excited about.
This is also when I go into layout phase and I get really fussy with everyone's resolutions and dimensions and making sure that we're going to look beautiful on the page.
Mm-hmm. A large part of Dirty Diamonds is Kelly and I sitting next to each other and just sort of hashing things out. So while all of our creators are working on their individual comics, we're working on the biggest part of the book in some ways, which is the cover. So what's been really fun about the covers is we've been able to work with artists that we ourselves revere and really like their work because we then reach out and try to solicit the, do you want to work with us to do our covers?
And in much the same way, we try to give them no guidance on what it is that we're looking for. We just want to hire really great artists to make really great work.
So for our beauty issue, we worked with an artist named Casey Nowak out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we knew her from the Small Press Expo scene. She's just a really great comic creator, friend of ours. And then we were like, hey, we want you to make something really beautiful for us for the beauty issue. I think they were also very much engaged in like the mission of what we do. Were they?
Yeah, Casey was a
submitter?
Not sure, but we had definitely run into Casey in several venues and had always been very excited about the project. So we're always about, if we meet you at a show, we want to just consume you into our family.
Yes.
And one of the ways we can do that is, hey, can we pay you money to make us a cover?
So this is the thumbnails Casey submitted to us for the beauty cover. And then this is the final beauty cover as it became or as it manifested. We do have this cover available as a bookmark at our table. If this is compelling to you, you should definitely come grab one.
And then what I think we both agree is probably the best day of the entire process is book layout day. So what we started to realize once the book reached a certain density is that we're asking people to approach a book with double-digit creators, dozens of creators. They're very short stories, so there's a lot of content in this book. So what can we be doing as editors to really guide people artfully through this entire journey that they're about to get into? So starting with the beauty issue in particular, we started to break our books up into sections, which are all thematically related to one another. And we really try to consider how are each of these comics back to back going to play off of each other. what is your introductory comic into the book, and what is the final thought going to be as you leave the book with the last comic. So here's where we really just get to print out every single page that we've been given, and we get to shuffle them around on a table and see which ones just really resonate with one another, which ones sort of amplify one another's messages, and what's going to be just the most compelling, interesting, and lovely experience for a reader as they're making their way through each book.
I think this moment is also a really great example of one thing that is inherently really fulfilling about Dirty Diamonds for both of us is this is a space where we are in charge. We make every decision, and doing the layout, doing the comic order is a space where we can really just let our gut run the show. And it doesn't have to have a like, oh, well, this should be like this because of this, or someone's going to think this, so we shouldn't do that. No, there's none of that. It's truly a like, we feel good about this. This is what we want to see. And therefore, this is what we're going to do. And at this point, we've been working with the comics very in-depthly for a period of time. So we're very intimately connected to this work. And then we're also just thrilled to see it printed on a piece of paper and excited that it's going to be a big fat book.
So the next problem becomes, how do you make the book? So this was another journey that we had to discover for ourselves as we transitioned away from photocopying and stapling on the floor to, we have too many pages, we need to figure out how to print this well. So we entered into the journey of sending books out to actual printing presses, which then raised the question of how do you pay for all that, which entered us into the wide and wonderful world of crowdfunding. So fortunately, we have a lot of skills from our day jobs to also lean on. Day jobs got to gain a lot of our skills through this process, but we really have to figure out what are our costs, including what are we paying to each of these creators, and how do we go about getting this accomplished. So here you'll see an example of how we budget ourselves out. We try to take into consideration what are some of the must-have costs, what are sort of the emergency situations where we could dig deep, and through book sales we could kind of consume some of the costs ourselves. And then what are we stretching towards, which could mean additional incentives for people who support our campaigns, additional funding for the creators, and we go from there. We then put together as compelling of a case as possible, and we've utilized Kickstarter for each of the volumes between 6 and 10 that we published. And we are, or 5 and 10, yeah. And we are lucky that we've always been successful and have well exceeded our goals. So we've always been able to get these projects out to the world as we conceived them. We've always been able to make good on our payments to our contributors. And it's been one of our primary distribution models as well, because through Kickstarter, you're gaining a community of people who are invested in what you do. They have a vested interest in making sure you're able to produce the project, not just that they're interested in that one book. So that's then a community we could have relied on time and time again to continue to keep our project moving forward.
And because the anthology utilizes the work of a lot of different creators, we're also able to access their networks and their communities. And therefore, there's a lot more people engaged in making sure that the Kickstarter is successful and funded. Each contributor also understands that if the Kickstarter is unsuccessful, we will publish the book. Kelly and I have always been in agreement that we will cough up the cash to get the book printed, but without the Kickstarter success, we would not be able to pay the contributors. But thankfully, the universe has been very kind to us, and we've been able to not only pay what we initially said we would, but give them a little bit of extra change at the same time.
So after about 30 days of obsessively thinking about Kickstarter, we get this glorious image on our screen. And 2 to 4 weeks later, money hits our account, and we get to start sending this off to our publisher or to our printing press. And then yada, 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 a number of weeks later, a giant set of pallets shows up on the sidewalk that we have to deal with.
So a fun fact of, if you get into self-publishing, you also get into self-storage. Lift
with your leg.
So this then has to go into, first things first is that
yes,
we go through the process of doing fulfillment for the Kickstarter. So we do a lot of like individualized items. We'll do book plates, we'll do signatures, we'll do drawings, all of these things that we kind of use to kind of get a little bit more money and a little bit more money and a little bit more money out of people throughout the campaign to again hit that success mark, but also hopefully hit that stretch goal to be able to pay our contributors even more. So that's probably like a good 3 weeks of our lives.
Yeah, we just become human assembly lines. We have had varying relationships with the U.S. Postal Service through this process. I think we're all on good terms now. But yeah, it's very much about a lot of the upfront estimations to make sure that we're not going to blow our budget at this phase of the game. So that's also a lot of lessons well learned.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's a glorious process of getting to see all of these books get into people's hands.
Mm-hmm. So then the next step in self-publishing is a storage space. Because
this is my favorite bill that I pay every month.
So this is our storage locker. Praise be always to the storage locker. Because we have 10 issues of Dirty Diamonds. It takes up a lot of space. Books are very dense, very small trees that essentially sit everywhere. So we always like to be very upfront with people and talk about both the challenges and the glories of running your own publishing project. But this is definitely a problem that everyone who wants to make their own stuff needs to solve. And it's where do you put things?
In a way that will not fill up your house and make your partner question what busy you're doing with your time.
Or give your cats ample scratching posts. So then a big part of what we do is tabling, as we are at Rice today. You see this table here on the screen. You will recognize it in the room over there. We not only table Dirty Diamonds in the center, but we each table our own individual works as well, which is a really nice kind of space where we can provide a lot of different opportunities for people to connect with the work, either through Dirty Diamonds or through either of us individually. Every year, we participate in the Small Press Expo. We are also on the prom committee for the Small Press Expo. So if you ever get the opportunity to table at SPX, I highly recommend it, but also make sure you come to prom Saturday night.
But yeah, tabling at events for us is really one of our primary distribution methods post the Kickstarter campaigns. Because it's very much about how do you connect with people? How do you get people energized about what it is that you're putting together and promoting the work of all these people that we've really fallen in love with. And this is actually a really big question within all of indie comics is just what do you do about distribution? So this is one of the ways that we invest a lot of time into. There's been a lot of other people having a lot of very thoughtful experiments with this. And one of them that we always love to sing the praises of is Radiator Distribution. That's Neil Brito based out of Florida. And what he's done is he's put together an entire online network. He also has succumbed to storage locker fatigue. But he will take the submissions of just about anybody if you reach out to him. And what he offers then to retailers in particular is an opportunity to shop across a multitude of independent comics creators. They can purchase from a wide berth of people all at once. And then you are stocked in a whole bunch of different stores. Or individuals can also come and shop there and discover your work. And you don't have to worry about your own distribution. Somebody is providing this service to you. So it's very accessible, very, very meaningful, I think, to the comics community. And it's just another way that you can also then tap into new audiences.
It's a really great way for us also to like meet other creators and really like expand the Dirty Diamonds network, because every person who's ever come to the table and been like, oh man, I want to be involved, we can then be like, hey, follow us on social media and get in on this next open call. It's given us a chance to like reach a wider audience, but also like make friends and build the comics community, which is really what we got into this for. So that's the long and short of Dirty Diamonds. We have about, if this clock is correct, 10 minutes. Do you all have any questions?
And I'll also say that Dirty Diamonds is a series that we ran for 10 volumes. So
yes,
here is the 10th and final installment of this version of Dirty Diamonds, which fittingly had the theme of death. So what we've actually been doing since then, and this is a book we admittedly published during COVID years, so that also kind of put a delay on things. And this book took about 2 years to be able to actually get into people's hands. But what we were really envisioning with the closure of this version of the anthology series is to figure out what's next for us as Dirty Diamonds. As we told you at the beginning, it was really in response to what we were seeing in the community at the time, which was just an underrepresentation of the kind of voices that we were most interested in reading about. So now we're very much back out here. We're super glad that events like this are happening again and that we're getting to reconnect with folks face to face. And it's very much for us an experience in trying to see what is it that we can be helpful for next. So we also welcome all ideas in that vein. We still want to be able to engage with female and femme comic creators and get their work and be a platform for them out into the world. But we're really in thought collection mode. So, we invite this. We would love to hear what you're passionate about or what you think is missing right now in the comic scene. And we will then very humbly see what it is that we feel like we can offer to meet that need. Mm-hmm. But I think that's really at the core of why we did Dirty Diamonds and why we would like to continue to usher this kind of a project forward.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do with the comics anthology. So I think some takeaways that we really have to remind ourselves about as well is that if you want to do this sort of thing, you absolutely can. Because 90% of it is really just, can you get your act together to be able to do it? And it can be as simple as putting it on a copy machine. It can be as simple as putting it up on a Tumblr. Because that's all publishing. That's all self-publishing. And you get to put that then on your card to say, I am a self-publisher. I am a publisher of comics. What can I do for you? What can I do for me? So it is an accessible thing that you can get into. You can turn it into a whole to-do if you so choose. But you can also keep it really accessible and close to your community and to your heart and do what it is that is in your reach. But this is our version of doing it. We love seeing how other people do it, and we learn a lot of really awesome lessons from them. And we're looking forward to doing more of it.
So I was just wondering, how you go about, organizing the group and, making sure everybody's on track and, what to do, hold on.
That's a big one. Yeah, especially once we started getting books with 60 plus creators in it. It was very much, how do you track all these folks? How do you make sure that they're not feeling overwhelmed, but they're still hitting the benchmarks? But yeah, we'll definitely backwards map our timelines. So we'll figure out, which event is it that we're targeting to have a release for this book or this project. Mm-hmm. And backwards from there, we figure out, how long will it take us to get this from the printer? So we start getting some estimates from them. You try to buffer everything as much as you possibly can, but we're only human. And going back from there, we think, how much time do we need to do the layouts? How much time do we need to do the editing process? And we got into a pretty good cycle after a few books. So we really then knew, if we did an open call for submissions during this period of time, it gives the creators, 3 to 6 months to be able to work on their comics and work with us in that process. And then still give us plenty of time to have, things inevitably go wrong mm-hmm. within that process and still debut on time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as far as keeping people on track, another tab of our lovely spreadsheet is just a human tracker. And we'll have our different milestones to say, did we get all your materials? Have we looked at your pencils? Have we each given you feedback? Because sometimes we also fall behind, admittedly, to say, we'll give people a due date and then we realize, oh, we have 60 things we need to take a look at. We didn't really plan well for our own time. Yeah. So we'll have to be very upfront with them to say, keep working. We're sorry that we're the delay in this case. But yeah, very much just making sure person by person that we're giving them all the time and attention that they deserve. So mm-hmm. we also need to know piece by piece what it is that we owe to them at various stages. But it is a spreadsheet that gives us peace and gives us certainty.
I think there's also, we've been doing this now for a while, and we are constantly learning and we're constantly reassessing and going, oh my God, that went really crunchy. How could we be doing this better? We have kind of a mantra of how can we be kinder to ourselves? So I think over time, we've learned how to pace things better and better and better. There's definitely improvements every year. But I will say that also the fact that we do regular check-ins with everybody, the fact that we ask to see the pencils, we ask to see the final drawings, we ask to see inks before tones, gives people, I think, milestones and markers that they know we're going to come looking for them. And I think it helps keep them moving the project forward. Now, mind you, there's some people that 2 weeks after we say yes are in the box, ready to go, done. And then there's the people that we are
chasing,
scratching at their door, being please get me the thing.
But once again, I'm also someone who needs a lot of deadlines, and I've never met a deadline on time. So we're very understanding. And I think a secret that we utilize that I fully encourage is don't give people your deadline.
Yeah.
Give them a fake deadline
Yes.
that you can push when and inevitably if they need additional time.
Yes.
So that's another lesson learned the hard way that I strongly encourage.
Yeah, the actual deadline and then the deadline I tell you are different things. That was a good question, though. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what you said
Correct.
about our mantra of being kinder to ourselves, because I think there have definitely been years where we did not manage that very well. And we experienced kind of what that took out of us, and those were good lessons for us to take into future years, which sometimes manifest as give yourself more breathing room in the schedule, section off hours of the day that you do commit to this, and where you give yourself permission to rest, so that it isn't if you're working 9 to 5, that it's got to be 5 till bedtime that you're working on this. That becomes wildly unsustainable, and it doesn't give you time to just experience other things that are going to inspire you and recharge your batteries.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is always the challenge of making art. I had someone in school say to me that congratulations, you get 2 full-time jobs for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, fun. But that is kind of a truth. And I think you sort of have to learn how to balance your time, but also making sure that you're balancing time for it's so overstated, but self-care. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating regular meals? And also, where can you be removing decisions from your day that then give you the ability to be making decisions somewhere else? So, I don't have to wear a uniform to work, but I literally have 5 of the same t-shirt and 5 of the same pair of jeans, and I wear that to work every day, because that is one space where then I don't have to think about this. I don't have to make a decision, and that gives me the ability to come home, immediately get into my comfy pants, and then hit my desk in my studio. But also, you're going to have crunch times, so you're going to have times where you're pushing yourself and you have to get a lot done in a very short period of time. But you're also going to have uninspired times. And I always think it's really important that when you're struggling like that, to take the time to step away. And knowing that you also have to make sure you're giving yourself a really long runway to get something done. Don't expect to be able to always bang things out in 2 weeks. Can you do it? Yes. Will you want to die at the end? Absolutely. So there's only so many times you can do that before you're like, cool, let me actually get started on this 3 months in advance, and I'm going to slowly chip away at it. Also, don't work more than 40 hours. When 5 o'clock hits, go home. Don't look at your email anymore. Turn off your cell phone. They don't own you. So
also, have we run the entire Kickstarter campaigns from our work? 100%. So beg, borrow, steal from your work hours if you need them, when you need them, because what is it that's actually what you're living to do versus working to do?
It's a good question, though. Did you have one?
Yeah. To ask, what was kind of your original Kickstarter goal versus how broad of a community around art already existed?
Yeah, I would say for the first book that we kickstarted, it was our issue where the theme was comics. And that one had, I think, about 30 contributors, and that easily doubled the volume size that we had in the previous issue, which was able to be stapled. So we were finally printing something with just sort of a digital print on demand website. So we were able to really lock in on exactly how much that was going to cost us.
So to give you just the straight up numbers, our first Kickstarter was 2014. We asked for $6,500, so $6,500. We got $8,600 out of 314 backers.
And yeah, by the time we get to our final issue, I think we requested.
Hold on, I got it.
How much we made.
So our final issue, which was Death, the Kickstarter was finished February 2020.
And that was 65 contributors, about a 250 page book.
It's a hefty tome. Big item. We asked for $15,000. We got $19,000 out of 369 backers. I will say one thing that we learned over time is to ask, like increase your prices. Like, don't come in being like, oh, we're going to sell this book for $12, so we're going to ask for $12. No, you're going to sell this book for $12, you're going to ask for $24 because that's the point of the Kickstarter. Not only are they getting the item, but they're giving you the capacity to make the thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the request of crowdfunding is an investment in you and in your concept and
Yes.
in having a hand in helping you to make your project happen. If it's just a pre-order campaign, you can do that. But it gave us sort of permission to say, to get the book, we're going to give you the book, a few little items, but also that you're investing in the success of this project. So give us, $35 for a $25 book.
Yeah.
And this is something that we could ask those same people because they already were invested in us and in our project. And they would then be willing to say, okay, yes, I want to be able to make this happen. And that extra little bit of money is what's going to get you there.
Yeah.
But it's scary to start putting numbers like that together. The original goal, also very scary. The more that it would go up in value, even though we'd had several successes under our belt, it never gets less scary.
No.
But you do start to really then take a hard look at what are those communal spaces that you have to dig into to give you the confidence to say, I might fail at this, but I have to try. So it was very much about, we have first and foremost the group of contributors. So we had 30 voices to say, ask your networks for a little bit of money, a little bit of support, spreading the word.
Yeah.
And then as we were iterating this over and over again, we got to continuously dig back into, those 300 people who supported the prior one, the additional people we got into the subsequent ones. So it was really just having to rely on your faith in that community that you're slowly building as you're putting these projects together. Because the more you're working, the more they get to know you, the more they have confidence in the kind of quality that you're putting together. And you're getting to re-energize them with new work. So it's definitely a leap of faith. And it was definitely how do we get this number as low as humanly possible to still be feasible to do and not giving ourselves a headache down the road or a problem down the road. Yeah, there's a lot of give and take there, but it's
and factor in taxes because you're going to have to pay taxes.
Yes, you're going to get
Amazon's going to
1099.
take their chunk. You have to factor in that information. But I think also ask the internet for things. The internet provides. If you go to the internet and you say, I need this thing to do this thing, I have yet to meet a situation where people on the internet haven't felt compelled to participate. But I think we also have a really good mission, and I think people feel really inspired to make sure that our contributors get paid. So I think that also really helps make sure that the dollars end up in our bank accounts so that we can be giving it to these artists that made this really cool stuff.
Yeah, and we more or less always end up at zero for these projects.
Oh, yeah.
It's every dollar in is a dollar out, which also is great for your taxes. Comics taxes, whole other discussion. But yeah, I think that also speaks to, we really got a system down for getting our math right. We then feel very confident that everything that we're getting in is going to achieve the project. And that we know when we ask for that much money, we're not playing around. We're saying it's going to take this much to make this project, and can you do to help us get there? But yeah, it's embrace the scaries, see what happens, and if it doesn't go well, you can always try it again.
Yeah. Failure is fine. You learn from failure. Okay. Every mistake we've ever made, we then learn to be oh, don't do it that way. Cool. Good to know. Tight. Thank you all so much for coming. This means a lot to us.